always say, have a conversation without confrontation. That is like my theme of activism, trying to save my family from this religious group, high control group. And to date, it's working really well. I mean, just formulate your ideas. Look out for buzzwords that may cause trouble, like cult and not necessarily high control, but there's some buzzwords out there that they will find offense and they will pick up on it really quick, and then their wall of security or defenses will go up, and they become defensive, and that leads to confrontation. So, you try, at least I do, I try to sort of formulate my ideas and stick with it on subjects that is counter to their way of living or their religion, but be respectful enough as to keep the conversation flowing very smoothly and having a civil conversation rather than a confrontation. But usually it goes into confrontation without your control, without you knowing it. I mean, somehow this sort of way of debate will you would think would lead smoothly into revelation or waking up or things like that. But sometimes if the person is really deeply indoctrinated past the Chinese communist method of indoctrination, is well versed, a lot of papers on how they indoctrinate their people and prisoners of war. I think my wife is in that particular category there, where logic has no effect whatsoever. Critical thinking is totally out the window, and it goes into this fantasy world that just makes no sense. And I would elaborate a little bit later. Sometimes you cannot avoid confrontation if the person you are talking to, the JW person, is just hell-bent on defending their faith when they don't have a leg to stand on as far as debate or counterpoint to your arguments. Let me elaborate the story here. This happened about a week ago. I'm still in research mode. I'm still reading about the history of the Jehovah Witnesses, the Watchtower. There's a lot of material out there. I mean, they were publishing books from the late 1800s to present time, as you all well known. But I'm more interested in the time period where they claim that Jesus was appointed king over the earth in 1914, and everything that has to be associated with that particular fantasy or myth. So I have the older books. My way of reasoning would be, okay, he was put as king in 1914 invisibly, and then in 1918, after doing a research and inspection of all the religions that are on the earth, he found that the Jehovah Witnesses, the Bible students at that time, were the only ones that were in lockstep or close to what God and Jesus told the first century Christians what to do and how to continue on the church afterwards. Only the Jehovah Witnesses were the only ones doing what they commanded. That is the Watchtower versions of it. So with that little bit of information, I wanted to see what was being printed at the time of Jesus' kingship until they were selected in 1918. So that would be the first 7 books of in the scripture. It's a 7-volume book set that Charles Taze Russell has wrote, sort of documenting his version of the Bible, his interpretation, along with maybe a couple of other people, but he's the main author. So I'm reading the first book, Divine Plan of the Ages. I'm almost done with that book. if you know the history of the Jehovah Witnesses on some of their theology that's unique to them, like 1914 and some other stuff, the little flock and the big flock or whatever, the great crowd. Uh, in that book, you will see like the genesis of those ideas or the seed that the society has used later on in years to justify their position of authority. In that book, in one of the chapters, I see where they have the lights getting brighter to signify that their progressive learning of the Bible. They it gets brighter and brighter. They understand it more and more as time goes by. Where in that particular parable or Bible verse, it was really talking about the path of a righteous man compared to the path of a unrighteous man. And I have to say, I have quite a library for with the original documents, the original books that are 100 years old or older that I'm actually reading, because the Jehovah Witnesses, when you tell them of a claim about something that, oh, Pastor Russell back in the day didn't predict Jesus coming to Earth in 1914. He actually predicted that date to be 1874. And you could say that to a Jehovah Witness, and they would challenge you as to where did you find that piece of information, and it's not enough to say that you found a copy in a PDF form on the internet. That is not enough. They are trained to say that, oh, those documents could be altered. The what do you call it? The PDF files and everything. And of course, it's not on jw.org anymore because they only go back to, I think, 1950, but they will not go back to the turn of the century in the 1900s. So what you have to do if you really want to prove your point is to have the original copy of the book with that statement on it. And I have such a copy. I have the original Divine Plan of the Ages with the pyramid in the front and the fold out thing of all the ages that Russell has, the whole gamut there, and it has it written there. It's got Watchtower publication, what do you call it, copyright on one of the pages. It's authentic. It's the original book that Jesus would have read to find out what the Bible students at the time were up to and be impressed by them according to their logic. To bring things back to, modern times, I'm reading it to find out what did they exactly say and teach back in the early 1900s. So I'm reading this book. I didn't, like I said, my library is pretty decent for a worldly guy, I would say. I got like a good 10 books of older publications with juicy, false prophecies and, policy changes and things of that nature. And there's a treasure trove of studying their history. If you don't know the history of your organization or in general, you are doomed to repeat that history, which the Watchtower Tract Society is not immune to. They are repeating history and doing the same antics as they did back then, and they're doing it now, but they cannot escape their history. Anyway, I'm going off tangent again. So I have this book and I'm reading it. I've been reading it for a good 4 or 5 months. It's, for me at least, I have to get into the mood of reading it because it's, to me, it's fantasy. It's going counter to what the Bible actually says, what's going on. I've read the Bible or listened to the Bible a good 5 times, audiobooks. So I know how to identify what is really written in the Bible. And when you read something in the first book, The Divine Plan of the Ages by Charles Taze Russell, you could instantly spot out the discrepancies between scripture and Russell's interpretation. So to me personally, that is a big help to sort of separate what's, written simply in the Bible to what is being altered and manipulated in those other books from the society. So that's sort of my angle as to, knowing my opponent, which is the Watchtower organization. In any event, I'm in the living room. I'm sitting down on the couch. I'm in the mood to go ahead and read a few chapters of this book. And in the book, I have Post-its all over the place with, points on it. And one of the points will be, just like I mentioned before, Pastor Russell predicted the end of the start of Jesus' return invisibly was in 1874 or 73. And also another juicy, statement from him was that the world were to end in 1914. That would be the end of the system, of the current system of things. In 1914, that would have been the end all of everything, and Jesus would have started his millennial reign in 1914. Just those 2 points alone is enough to, send a Jehovah Witness, if he or she is really open-minded, into a tailspin of doubt. Because of course they're rewritten the history a good 2-3 times already, from what they're saying now to what they were saying before. So like I said, I'm minding my own business. I'm reading the book, the few chapters, and like I said, I have this thing marked with Post-its all over the place with, references and a statement being made, and I counter argue that statement with actual current Bible verses, and there's a whole bunch, and to me it's like a puzzle. I make it into a game where, you open up the book, you read what it's being said, and you pick out all the wrong theology and the changing of theology, the misinterpretation, and things of that nature. And I make it into a big game, and then write my notes on these Post-its. I don't want to write on the book itself because it's an antique, in my opinion, and I don't want to damage it. So I don't know how it started, but my wife, she's watching TV. We're on the same couch. I'm reading and she's watching TV. And she makes a statement like, oh, look at you and your Post-its, or something like that. And we get to talking about it, about me reading this book. And I'm like, yeah, I'm reading about your history. This book here is your book. And this is the book, more than likely, Jesus would have read if he really was, on earth invisibly in 1914. Then she's really being condescending. I mean, just from the get-go, she's visibly and very hard rolling her eyes. She's rolling her eyes, being very condescending, and practically putting me down about reading that book. And she makes a statement like, "Oh, that's not my book." And I'm like, yes, it is. This is your book. This is what started it all. This is the genesis of your religion. And Charles Taze Russell was the founder of your religion. And I want to know what Jesus was reading and why they picked the Bible students at that time. And that's when everything went downhill. A little bit later, I was telling her, I was telling her that, listen, I don't know why you're being condescending towards me. Every time I want to read about your organization, you are very condescending towards me, looking down on me, and all this other, and it doesn't bother me. I got thick skin. I know when she's up against the wall and cannot win an argument, insults are being thrown out. She calls me an asshole and things like that. And like I said, I got thick skin. I know her heart, so it doesn't affect me at all. But I'm defending my position, and I was defending my position on reading their history to find out what was going on. And I was telling her, hey, listen, I started this journey about 2.5 years ago. This is when I told her about that. I'm telling her everything just about what I'm doing, what I want to tell her. That is, hey, I wanted to know about your organization and see what's going on, because there's all this funny business going on with child abuse cases and the shepherd of the Flock of God book that has many double standards in it, and the tipping point for me was reading your What Does the Bible Really Teach book. It's an first indoctrination book out there that they used to teach there about their religion, just about. They say the Bible, but it's actually indoctrination into their religion. And I told her that I couldn't get past chapter 4. I think I made it to chapter 6. And what triggered me to stop what I was doing and actually read the Bible for itself was chapter 4, when they write Colossians 1 verse 16, where they inserted the word other into, Jesus created all things on earth or something like that, where they inserted the word other to make it say that Jesus Christ created all other things above the earth, on the earth, and below the earth, or something to that effect. I'm paraphrasing, of course. And I said there were there was no translational sort of justification to insert that word. Inserting that word was purely theological to make the theology of Jesus not making everything on earth to match the Jehovah Witnesses theology, because they say he's the first one created, so if he couldn't create himself, and that just causes trouble for them. And I told them about that reference was coming from their interlinear book, their purple Watchtower publication, interlinear, that has the Greek and their version on the other side. And they changed it there. They have the correct Greek, but they changed it into the other side, into English, to fit their theology. And it just snowballed off of there. And I said, after reading that, there's no justification of changing that verse like that. No Greek to English grammar gymnastics were being done there. I mean, it's as simple and clear as it could be. And of course, like every Jehovah Witness, if you challenge them on their theology or anything that is counter to their cause, they start changing subjects here and there, everywhere, to get you off base. And in this case, it wasn't working because I kept on point. Back to the divine plan of the ages, and I was telling her that the organization are false prophets because Jesus didn't come back in 1914. And I told her a few reasons why. Israel was destroyed in 587 before Christ BC and not 607 like the society says. And that was based off of Charles Taze Russell's predictions and numerology. And the numerology was confirmed in his eyes by measurements being taken from the pyramids of Giza. And I showed her the book, and the book has a big old pyramid of Giza right there in the front cover. So I have receipts. I have proof. Watchtower Publications, the original, very old, very fragile, and I'm showing her this, and this is the genesis of the downfall of your religion, because right from the beginning, they just started off the block on the wrong foot right from the get-go. And I'm telling her all this, I didn't throw the whole anti-Jehovah Witness, thing at her, but I'm showing her the stuff that I'm reading currently and where I'm at, and that's the false prophecies of 1914. And she was saying, well, they don't teach that now. You could almost predict what I'm going to say and what she brought up. And that is, the light is getting brighter and brighter line. And I looked up the verse and everything. I knew exactly what it was. And she started using that the society is progressively knowing more and more about the Bible. And I'm like, the Bible never changes, but your publications changes all the time. So it's your interpretation of the Bible that's really flawed here. And you could just imagine how the argument is going. And just the point of that Bible verse, it's Proverbs chapter 4, verse 18. But the path of the righteous is like the light of dawn that shines brighter and brighter until the full day. The Jehovah Witnesses took that verse out of context to say that understanding of Scripture gets brighter and brighter, not the path of the righteous. And of course, they leave out the next verse that tells of the man that does, or the person that's wicked, and his path is getting darker and darker. So I tell her about that verse, but and everything that hey, even that verse you guys are getting wrong. You're totally getting that out of context. And then I showed her. Then I counter her claims on using the lights getting brighter and brighter, and I was telling her the light is not getting brighter and brighter. It's already bright. If you look at 1 John chapter 1 verse 5, there's a verse there now that will totally destroy the Jehovah Witnesses idea of knowledge being progressive, and it says, and this is the message we have heard from him and announced to you, God is light, and in him there is no darkness at all. So if there's no darkness at all, how's the light getting progressively brighter and brighter when there is no darkness to begin with? And she stumbled on that for a couple of seconds, and just stopped her cold on that regard. And we went in, and she went into somewhere else. I just ended it right there. Yeah, she didn't have, mind you, she's going off the cuff. She doesn't have a Bible with her. She's really rusty on her JW apologetics, and I'm totally destroying her with receipts, and without even trying. But her delusion is just way out there to where it doesn't matter what I say, and I would explain here in a minute. And I'm so disappointed that I didn't have I didn't have time to record it. I mean, my phone was there and everything, but we were really getting to going back and forth. And we wasn't yelling at each other or anything like that. Obviously, she was getting a little bit heated, and I was trying to keep it cool. It was hard, but I was trying to keep it cool, stay to the point, stick to the Bible, stick to their publications. Just answer back with everything according to their written, documents. But to the point of, the light getting brighter and brighter, I was saying, how many times is the light's going to get brighter when consistently through each and every generation of the Watchtower history, starting from Charles Taze Russell, the 1914 prediction has failed. That's prophecy number one that was failed. During Rutherford's reign, Judge Rutherford, the saints of the Old Testament didn't come back in 1925. I told her about that prediction, and they written down that it was, sure to happen. That failed. So the next one was 1975, and then I told her briefly about them claiming to be prophets of God from the Watchtower publications in the Watchtower, 1972, April 1st edition. And I do have that publication in the bound volume in my library. So I could have showed her that, but I told her about it just instead. I couldn't bring everything out. They failed on that. And now another failure in present time was the overlapping generation. Can you explain to me the overlapping generations, where in the Bible, in Moses' time, a generation was killed off in 40 years, and then the first chapter of Matthew shows the progression from Adam to Jesus, with all those people in between adding up to, what was it, like 400 people or something like that. Meaning, if you separate them, you will see that there's, 40 years in a generation, 70 to 40 years in a generation, something to that effect. Matthew chapter 1, you would see the progression, and there's no overlap. They didn't talk about overlapping generation in that particular chapter. Destroys their overlapping generation idea out the water. I told her about that, so that's blown out. Then finally, I asked her, and I kind of brought things back down to, an okay level as far as us being heated up. And I say, well, let me ask you a simple question then, a personal question. According to you, is Jesus Christ your personal savior? Is he your mediator? Initially, she says yes. She said, yes, he is. He died for us, and all the things that you would think they would believe in with other traditional Christians. And I told her, well, you might think that, but the society does not think that. Jesus Christ is only the mediator for the 144,000s, and the rest of you have to to be in good graces with the 144,000s to get the trickle down effect to be saved. She doesn't back up her statements, like I said. She just blurts out anything from the top of her head, like, oh no, they didn't, like that, without no justification or proof. They didn't say that, almost like gaslighting, or try to come up with whatever to counteract her idea of theology without any backup, no receipts. And I said, and I have all the documentations for that. I got the Guide to Bible Understanding book, this big, huge, thick blue book that has that statement in one of their in the pages in there that says that God is not our mediator. Then the Watchtower publications. I don't have that, but I do have a little book. I think Peace and Security or something to that effect. They have a line there that talks about Jesus not being the big crowd's mediator. He's only a mediator to 144,000. So I have her backed up in the corner with that, and I'm sticking to that alone. And I was telling her, according to this, and according to what a lot of what the Bible is actually talking about, you and the kids are not going to make it to the new system. You are going to be, left out. You're not going to make it. Neither am I. And I fully know that, but you don't know that. In Christian theology, traditional Christian theology, I'm not going to make it with the mind frame that I have, the mindset that I have right now. I'm agnostic. Oh, that just set her off in a way. No yelling, no nothing like that. But then when she starts doing ad hominem attacks on me, yeah, she starts throwing some ad hominem attacks on me and my character, bringing up issues that we had in the past that's already been squashed, and personal issues that is not even religiously related, but she's bringing up old dirt on us in our past. No infidelity or nothing like that. I never cheated on her, but I'm not going to get into it. But she's using that as leverage, but it's not working. It didn't work at all. It still didn't change the idea that you and the kids are not going to make it with your current course of action or fellowship with the current Jehovah Witness theology. You're not going to make it if you follow that theology, and the Bible is plainly tells you that. But I didn't go any more further because already I've thrown out too many issues, too many points that is definitely going to overload her with everything. It's like telling her, the Australian Royal Commission, on top of their involvement with the UN, telling her about the food boxes are actually donations from the federal government, and all these issues that the society is not telling her about. I don't want to overload her with all that stuff yet. I'm sticking to strictly theology of traditional Christian thinking to Jehovah Witnesses theology, and just separating them to just sticking to that. The Bible against their publications and what's being said or misinterpreted. But in this case, she lost the argument or our conversation there. She lost it. When she starts with the attack, like they say, you've won the argument. And really, I was really pressing the issue as to Jesus is not your mediator. And the Bible has verses that says that you are not to follow men. So if Jesus is not your mediator, but you have to be in good graces with the 144,000s, they're men and women. There are princes and men and all that. In the Bible, in multiple places, tells you not to go through them. And I give her the famous verse of, through Jesus, Jesus is the light, the way, and there's multiple verses to that effect. He is the only way to go to the Father. And another thing I brought up was Jehovah is not the name of God. I mean, how can you call upon the name of Jehovah when Jehovah is not his name? And I gave her an analogy. So I'm going to call on the name of Billy Joe, because that's the only name I know you of, which is a nickname, instead of, the Father, like Jesus has commanded us on how to pray. The rabbit hole was getting pretty deep at that point, and we just stopped it there, and she was really mad, and I just kept reading my Divine Plan of the Ages. But to this point, I just want to relay, the main point of this video, that with your best effort on how to appease your Jehovah Witness loved one or person that you engage with, and just bring in proof, verifiable proof from their documentation. I mean, just, they accuse us of always, making up things, and where did you hear that story from, and things like that. Like, for example, I'm going off on another tangent. She was watching the assembly, the convention on the big screen, the current one. And Samuel Hurd was on there talking and everything, and he was there. And I was like, oh, and I mentioned something that, he said that, he said in a talk that, women has 10% less cranial capacity than men, and that's why women shouldn't be in charge of anything, or something to that effect. Is real famous, and she defended him straightforward, saying, "Where did you hear that from? Was it a real recording?" And tried to allude that it was a fake recording. And I'm like, yeah, it's actually him. I mean, you could tell by the sound of his voice and everything that it's him talking. But personally, really can't prove it because it's only an audio recording. You don't have any video to match up with what he's saying. So, you don't have no proof. The rest of us, we don't have that proof. It could have been fabricated. Who knows? I believe it so. But I couldn't use that as an argument to keep going with that argument that, Samuel Hurd thinks less of women. That argument wasn't going nowhere in my favor, so I left it at blank. So that's why they always say that, PDF documents on the internet, you can't believe everything that's on the internet because you have apostates there trying to, make an issue and stuff like that. But I have the original copies of everything, of every point that I want to make. If I talk to her further into these issues or anybody else, primarily my kids, I'm saving all these copies for my kids. So, like I said, I've lost interest in trying to convert her not even trying to convert her. I'm just trying to get her to do research on her own. And I'm just nudging her a little bit into the documents that I have. But she's far gone with the issue of Jesus being her mediator, and I'm giving her Bible verses. I'm giving her actual written documentation from Jehovah Witness publications that they don't believe that Jesus is their mediator. Even the current publication, so it's not old light, it's still current light, according to them, with their insight on the scriptures, reference, whatever they have there. It says it there, not directly, but they allude to the point that Jesus is not your mediator in the current publications. I say, hey, look at your insight on the scriptures volume over there that she has in her library. You can look it up there and find out for yourself. But at some point when she wasn't getting her way and she really can't counter argue my point when she started to insult me. She just says, I don't care. I quote you, I don't care. Because she still thinks that she's going to go to the paradise, and she was accusing me of preventing her and the kids to seeing the paradise. And I'm like, well, how? And I was like, how are you going to see the paradise when you're not going to go through Jesus first? You're never going to see the paradise. You're not even going to get your foot in the door because you're denying Jesus' mediatorship. You don't believe in him, dying for your sins. So you're not even going to be, you're not going to have a chance. You and the kids don't have a chance currently, according to scripture. Plain and simple. She didn't want to hear nothing about it anymore, and the argument ended. The most surprising thing out of this particular thing was the next day. It's like nothing ever happened. It was business as usual between me and my wife. Gaslighting, I would say, in a way. Yeah. And to this day, this was last week, so 7 days later, currently, the subject was never brought up. I'm not bringing up the subject. I wasn't going to. She pretty much, made an issue of it, or by mocking me while I was reading those books. And yeah, that's where it's at. It's like it never happened. She's smiling at me, and she's cooking me dinner sometimes. We both do it. We both cook, but and we're having cutesy conversations about our kids. So yeah, that was very disturbing, but nonetheless interesting. Like I said, she's far gone. I'm wasting my time trying to wake her up. So I concentrate on the kids. That's my main goal. Oh, by the way, the kids heard the whole argument. I would say discussion. I don't think she was probably arguing, but I held my own with the argument, and both my kids were there listening to the whole exchange. Whether they understood it or not is yet to be seen. Just because you're trying to be civil and having a conversation without confrontation, it may or may not work. Jehovah Witnesses will probably come around, causing trouble, or at least their theology will, especially if they're dug in like my wife, fully indoctrinated to past the point of I don't know how I would explain it, cognitive dissonance at its most brutal. So I hope this helps out. If some of you guys are doing the same method that I'm doing, that you may get into an argument. It's not unavoidable, even if you're being pleasant and everything. It might just happen, but don't freak out. Just end everything with on a high note if possible, and then don't push the issue. Just let it naturally flow. Like I said, this is convention time for Jehovah Witnesses, so I don't bring up none of this, anti-Jehovah Witness truths, I would say. I don't bring it up. So let them have their week or week and a half of JW Bliss, and then afterwards, go back right at it easily. Ease into the waking up process, if I want to call it that. Okay.